My husband of 45 years passed away, and instead of comfort, I was handed a single cardboard box containing our entire life together. My stepson's wife, Brenda, added a cruel note. "It fits everything you deserve." I collapsed, but something deep inside me shifted. You won't believe what happened next. Listen to my story. Like, share, and tell me where you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Arthur's passing had left a void so vast it felt as though the entire world had simply ceased to rotate on its axis. 6 weeks, that's how long it had been, and each day blurred into the next. A monochrome landscape of grief and an overwhelming numbness. I moved through the motions of existence, attending the funeral, accepting condolences, making cups of tea I never drank, all while my inner world remained utterly silent, stunned into submission by the loss of my beloved husband. 45 years we had built a life together, brick by brick, memory by memory, and now, the foundation had crumbled, leaving me adrift. It was Mr. Davison, Arthur's longtime attorney, who pierced the shroud of my grief with a phone call that morning. His voice, usually so calm and measured, held a subtle tremor, a note of concern that tugged at the edges of my numbness. "Eleanor," he began, his tone gentle, "I'm so sorry to bother you at such a time, but we need to schedule the reading of Arthur's will. Would you be able to come to the office tomorrow morning?" I agreed mechanically, the words barely registering. I assumed it was a formality, another step in the agonizing process of saying goodbye. I certainly didn't anticipate it would be the first tremor of an earthquake. The following morning found me seated in Mr. Davison's meticulously organized office, the scent of old paper and leather doing little to soothe my nerves. Across from me sat Thomas, Arthur's son from his first marriage, and his wife, Brenda. Thomas looked like a ghost, his eyes hollow, empty of any discernible emotion, whether grief or malice. Brenda, however, radiated a brittle impatience. She kept checking her watch, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the polished conference table, a thin, almost predatory smile playing on her lips whenever she thought no one was looking. It was unsettling. Mr. Davison cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. "We're here today to read the last will and testament of Arthur Henderson." He began to read, his voice steady but solemn, outlining the significant assets Arthur had accumulated over a lifetime. The family home, a substantial investment portfolio, various properties. My mind drifted, half listening, half lost in memories of Arthur, until a particular clause jolted me back to the present. "To my son, Thomas Henderson, I bequeath the entirety of my estate, including the primary residence located at 14 Elmwood Drive, all investment holdings, and remaining assets." I blinked, certain I had misheard. My heart began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. Mr. Davison continued, his words growing fainter as my world tilted. "To my beloved wife, Eleanor Henderson, I leave a modest annual stipend sufficient for her personal expenses and her personal effects." Stunned, I felt a cold wave wash over me. A modest stipend? Personal effects? After 45 years of partnership, of building everything with Arthur, this was my inheritance? It was preposterous. My voice, when it emerged, was a whisper. "Mr. Davison, are you certain? This can't be right. Arthur and I." Mr. Davison looked genuinely pained. "Eleanor, I am reading directly from the document. It was legally executed and signed by Arthur 18 months ago. 18 months. The date hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. My mind reeled. 18 months ago was precisely when Brenda had started to insert herself more deeply into our lives, ostensibly concerned for Arthur's health, though her concern always felt more like surveillance. But Arthur updated his will every few years, I managed, my voice gaining strength, and he always ensured I was well provided for, as we had discussed countless times. Brenda let out a small, dismissive scoff. "Honestly, Eleanor, Arthur was getting on. People change their minds. Besides, she added, her thin smile widening into something almost triumphant, it's done. You heard Mr. Davison. Her tone was cold, final, leaving no room for argument or disbelief. That evening, I retreated to a quiet hotel room, unable to face the empty house that was no longer mine. I was still reeling from the shock, trying to process the enormity of what had happened, when there was a knock on the door. It was Thomas. He stood in the hallway, clutching a large, battered cardboard box in his arms. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes fixed on some distant point over my shoulder. Anything to avoid meeting my gaze. Here, he mumbled, pushing the box towards me. Your personal effects. Just as I reached for it, Brenda appeared from behind him, her presence radiating a cruel satisfaction. She leaned in, her voice a low, venomous hiss. It fits everything you deserve, Eleanor. The words struck me like a physical blow. I clutched the box, feeling its unexpected weight, and stumbled back into the room. The door closed with a soft click, sealing me in with my sudden, crushing despair. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the floor, the cardboard box landing with a thud beside me. With trembling fingers, I tore open the flaps. Inside, nestled amongst some old newspapers, were Arthur's reading glasses, the worn cashmere sweater he loved, and a small collection of his prized baseball cards. 45 years of a shared life, a lifetime of memories, of love, companionship, and dreams, reduced to a handful of trinkets that could be packed into a single, flimsy cardboard box. The injustice of it all was overwhelming, suffocating. I felt utterly, completely broken. Just then, my phone rang, startling me. It was Vivian, my dearest friend, her voice laced with concern. Eleanor? Are you okay? I've been trying to reach you. I have a terrible feeling. I must have sounded utterly distraught, because before I could explain, she declared, I'm coming over. Be there in 10 minutes. True to her word, Vivian burst into the room a short while later, taking in my tear-streaked face and the open cardboard box on the floor. Her eyes widened as I recounted the events of the day, her initial concern quickly turning into white-hot anger. That's impossible, she exclaimed, her voice incredulous. Arthur adored you, Eleanor. He would never, ever do something like this. This has Brenda's grubby fingerprints all over it, I swear. Vivian's outrage was a mirror to the swirling anger that was beginning to replace my numbness. The deep wrongness of it all gnawed at me. This wasn't Arthur. The meticulous, fair, and loving man I had spent my life with wouldn't have made such a drastic change to his will without a word, without a reason. It didn't reflect his character, his careful nature, or his enduring love for me. It simply didn't add up, and as I stared at the meager contents of the box, a slow, cold resolve began to take root in my heart. 3 days blurred into an agonizing haze since the will reading and the arrival of that cruel cardboard box. I was huddled on Vivian's sofa, a forgotten cup of tea cooling beside me, a plate of untouched toast sitting on the coffee table. The thought of food churned my stomach. My body felt heavy, my spirit crushed under the weight of betrayal and grief. Vivian, ever the unwavering friend, hovered nearby, her brow furrowed with concern. Eleanor, you have to eat something, she pleaded, her voice gentle but firm. You haven't touched a thing since you got here. You need your strength. Med. I shook my head, my throat tight. I can't, Viv. It feels like I'm suffocating. Everything just ended. Vivian sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. No, Eleanor, it hasn't ended. This isn't Arthur. You know it. I know it. We can't just let them get away with this. You have to fight. Her words were a rallying cry, a spark trying to ignite a fire in the ashes of my despair. Her conviction was a lifeline, a fragile thread in my drowning world. The doorbell chimed then, a welcome interruption to my spiral. Vivian went to answer it, and a moment later, a familiar, youthful voice echoed through the hallway. Grandma! My heart leaped. It was Clara, my 15-year-old granddaughter, Thomas's daughter. She stood in the doorway, her school backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes wide with a mixture of concern and a fierce protectiveness that was so typical of her. She'd come all the way to Vivian's house against her mother, Brenda's, wishes, I was sure. Clara had always been an old soul, perceptive and deeply connected to Arthur and me. She rushed over, enveloping me in a tight hug. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I heard what happened. Mom told me not to come, but I had to see you. I held her close, a flicker of warmth spreading through my chest for the first time in days. Oh, Clara, my sweet girl. Thank you for coming. Andri. Vivian offered Clara a glass of juice and a plate of cookies, which the teenager accepted gratefully. As she munched on a cookie, Clara's expression turned serious. Grandma, things are really weird at the house. Dad's been so evasive, like he's hiding something. And Mom, she's been on the phone constantly, talking about financial restructuring and liquidating assets. She even mentioned selling the house. My breath caught in my throat. Sell the house? The home Arthur and I had shared for decades? It was unimaginable. Selling the house? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Clara nodded, her gaze full of sorrow. That's not even the worst of it. She's already talking about converting Grandpa Arthur's study into a home gym. She said it's prime real estate for a Peloton. A sharp, searing pain shot through me. Arthur's study. His sanctuary, filled with books, maps, and the scent of pipe tobacco. The place where he read, wrote, and worked on his countless hobbies. To imagine it transformed into a sterile, impersonal gym for Brenda's vanity was a fresh stab of betrayal. It was an assault on his memory, a cruel erasure of his presence. Clara continued, her voice lowering, conspiratorial. And she's already selling things, Grandma. Grandpa's collection of antique silverware that he inherited from his grandmother, and that big painting of Venice that hung in the living room, the one he got you for your anniversary. She said she found a buyer, someone who appreciates fine art more than we did. My stomach clenched. That painting was a symbol of our travels, our shared love for art and beauty. It was a piece of our history. To hear it was being sold, casually, callously, was another blow. Clara then reached into her backpack, pulling out a small velvet pouch. She opened it, revealing Arthur's gleaming gold pocket watch, an heirloom he cherished. And this, she said, carefully placing it in my hand. I snuck it out. Grandpa always kept it in his desk drawer. He showed it to me once, a few months ago, and told me, "This will go to your grandma Eleanor someday, Clara. It's for her, always." My fingers closed around the smooth, cool metal of the watch. Arthur's words, spoken with such certainty, echoed in my mind. He had intended for me to have it, not Thomas, not Brenda, but me. The watch, a small but tangible connection to his true intentions, felt like a powerful talisman in my hand. Clara looked at me, her young face etched with a wisdom beyond her years. Grandma, something's not right. Dad's acting really strange. He's so quiet, like he's scared. And Mom, she's constantly agitated. She paused, then leaned closer. I overheard them fighting last night. Mom was yelling at Dad about money and documents he was supposed to destroy. She said something like, "Did you even do it? Because if anyone finds out, we're both ruined." My blood ran cold. Destroy documents? What documents? What kind of ruin was Brenda referring to? Clara continued, her brow furrowed in concentration. And I remember, when Grandpa Arthur was really sick, a few months before he passed, Mom was always going into his study. She said she was helping him with his affairs and organizing his papers. But sometimes, she'd stay in there for hours, even when Grandpa was resting in bed. and she'd always lock the door behind her. The pieces began to click into place, forming a horrifying picture. Eleanor and Vivian exchanged a long, knowing glance. A cold certainty settled in my gut, replacing the fog of grief with a sharp clarity. This wasn't just a cruel will. This was something far more sinister. Brenda's frequent visits to Arthur's study, the date of the will, Thomas's evasiveness, Brenda's desperate talk of destroying documents, it all pointed to a calculated scheme. "I need to speak with Mr. Davison again," I stated, my voice firm, resolute. The numb despair was gone, replaced by a steely determination. I had a fight on my hands, and I wasn't going to back down. Not when Arthur's legacy and his memory were at stake. The doorbell chimed again, pulling me from the intense conversation with Vivian and Clara. Vivian opened the door, and there stood Mr. Davison, his usually impeccable suit slightly rumpled, a briefcase clutched in his hand, and a look of deep concern etched on his face. "Eleanor," he began, his voice relieved. "I've been trying to reach you. Your phone went straight to voicemail. I turned it off, Mr. Davison. I needed some quiet." My voice was still raw, but the determination sparked by Clara's revelations had begun to harden its edges. He nodded, understanding, then glanced at Vivian and Clara. "I wonder if I could speak with you privately, Eleanor." I met his gaze, then looked at Vivian, who squeezed my hand reassuringly. Clara stood a little behind her, a silent, watchful presence. "No, Mr. Davison," I said, my voice firm. "Vivian is my closest friend, and Clara has been a great help. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of them." Mr. Davison hesitated for a moment, then sighed, seemingly accepting my decision. He stepped inside, placing his briefcase carefully on Vivian's coffee table. "Very well. Eleanor, I've had some disturbing findings since our meeting yesterday. There appear to be some significant irregularities in Arthur's files, and I have growing concerns about the will that was read last week." My heart pounded. This was it, the confirmation of the wrongness I had felt. "What kind of irregularities?" I asked, leaning forward. He opened his briefcase, extracting a folder filled with papers. "As you know, Arthur was very meticulous about his estate planning. He typically updated his will every few years, or after any significant life event. Well, 3 months before his passing, Arthur visited my office. He was very specific. He wanted to update his will to ensure your financial security, explicitly stating his wishes regarding the house and your continued comfortable lifestyle." A wave of emotion washed over me. Relief for Arthur's true intentions and a fresh surge of anger at the injustice. "He did?" "Yes," Mr. Davison confirmed. "I drafted a new document, carefully detailing all his instructions. However, I had a pre-planned 2-week vacation to Europe immediately after that meeting. When I returned, I contacted Arthur to schedule a time for him to come in and sign the new will. He told me, quite unequivocally, 'It's all handled, Davison. Don't you worry about a thing.' Given his nature, I assumed he had either made arrangements to sign it while I was away, or perhaps even gone to another attorney if he was in a hurry, though that was highly unlikely for Arthur. I trusted his word, naturally." He paused, running a hand over his thinning hair. "However, after our reading last week, something kept bothering me. The will we read, it simply wasn't the one I drafted. The format was different. The legal language used, while valid, was not my firm's standard phrasing, and, most crucially, the provisions for you, Eleanor, were drastically altered from what Arthur explicitly instructed me to include." My mind raced. "So, the will that was read, it wasn't the last will he had you prepare?" "No," Mr. Davison stated emphatically. "It was not. I have my notes from Arthur's meeting, outlining his specific instructions for the new will. They were very clear. He intended for you to retain ownership of the house, along with a substantial portion of his investments to ensure your absolute comfort and security for the rest of your life. The stipend and personal effects stated in the will that was read are a stark contradiction to his final instructions to me. So, I began, the word catching in my throat. Are you saying that the will might be fraudulent? Mr. Davison looked directly at me, his gaze serious. Eleanor, I cannot make that accusation without more evidence. But I can tell you that there are serious questions that need to be investigated. Given Arthur's precise nature, it is highly improbable he would have changed his mind so completely, and then informed me it was handled without providing a copy of this supposedly new will. Clara, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up, her young voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Davison, I remember something. When Grandpa Arthur was really sick, and Mom was always in his study, she wasn't just organizing papers. I saw her, once, taking a whole stack of documents, big envelopes and files, and she took them to her closet. She has a safe in her closet, a small one behind some clothes. She put them in there and locked it. I heard the click. Mr. Davison's eyebrows shot up. He looked at Clara, then at me. That information, Clara, is very, very interesting. Extremely interesting. In fact, he pulled out a small notepad and jotted something down. If there's an earlier, legitimate will, or any other documents that support Arthur's true intentions, they could be crucial. He looked back at me, his gaze firm. Eleanor, for now, I advise you to investigate this quietly. We don't want to alert Brenda or Thomas prematurely, not until we have something concrete. Your objective is to find any evidence that either supports Arthur's true wishes or suggests tampering with the will that was presented. Any old documents, letters, financial statements, anything at all that might shed light on this. I nodded, my mind already buzzing with possibilities. My gaze fell upon the cardboard box, still sitting on Vivian's floor. Before, it represented my dismissal, my worth reduced to trinkets. But now, seeing Arthur's glasses, his sweater, his baseball cards, and feeling the weight of his pocket watch in my hand, I saw them not as mere remnants, but as potential clues. A powerful spark of determination ignited within me, burning away the last vestiges of grief-induced numbness. Brenda thought she could erase Arthur's true wishes, erase me from his life and legacy, but she had gravely underestimated me. I wouldn't let her. This was no longer just about money or property. It was about Arthur's memory, his truth, and my dignity. And I was going to fight for it. 2 weeks crawled by, each day a delicate balance of waiting and simmering frustration. I remained at Vivian's, finding solace in her unwavering support and the quiet comfort of her home. Mr. Davison, true to his word, was discreetly conducting his investigation, working behind the scenes to piece together the truth. The silence from his end, however, was deafening, leaving me to wonder if we would ever find the concrete evidence we desperately needed. Clara, a vigilant spy within her own home, provided regular, distressing updates. Her texts and hushed phone calls painted a vivid picture of Brenda's systematic erasure of Arthur's presence. Grandma, one text read, Mom sold Grandpa's antique desk, the one with the secret drawer. She got a modern glass one instead. Another explained, she's redecorating the entire living room. Said Grandpa's taste was too traditional for her. The most recent update was delivered with a heavy sigh. Over the phone. Mom's talking about renovating the master bedroom. Says she wants to cleanse the energy and turn it into her personal sanctuary. It's like she's trying to scrub every trace of Grandpa from the house. Each piece of news was a fresh wound, a reminder of Brenda's callous disregard for Arthur's memory and my shared life with him. It was a calculated act of demolition, aimed not just at property, but at history, at love itself. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me. Hello, Eleanor? This is Sarah Miller. I used to be Arthur Henderson's assistant at the office. A rush of memories flooded me. Sarah, a kind, efficient young woman who had worked with Arthur for years before he retired. Sarah, yes, of course. How lovely to hear from you. Though I wish it were under happier circumstances. Her voice lowered, tinged with urgency. Eleanor, I've been trying to decide if I should call you, but something happened that just didn't sit right with me, and I felt you needed to know. Arthur came into the office about 4 months before he passed, just a few weeks before he retired. He seemed agitated. He said he wanted to review some estate planning documents. Not with Mr. Davison, but just with me, informally. He asked me to notarize a very specific statement for him and then place it, along with a sealed envelope, into our secure off-site storage facility. My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of statement? What was in the envelope? He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned it was insurance. And he was very clear about the release instructions. He said the envelope was only to be released to you, Eleanor, or to Mr. Davison personally, with proper identification, no one else, under any circumstances. Insurance. The word resonated deep within me. Arthur, ever the strategist, always planning for every contingency. Had he anticipated something like this? Sarah continued, her voice gaining a sharp edge of indignation. The reason I'm calling now is because of something that happened last week. A woman, Brenda, came into the office. She presented a letter, supposedly from you, Eleanor, authorizing her to collect Arthur's personal effects and any stored documents from our facility. My blood ran cold. A letter? From me? Sarah, I never wrote such a letter. I knew it, she exclaimed, her voice full of relief and vindication. I looked at the signature, and while it was a good attempt, it just didn't look quite right to me. I've known your signature for years from all the paperwork you used to sign with Arthur. Plus, the tone of the letter was all wrong. You're always so precise, and this was aggressive. So, I told Brenda that I couldn't release anything without further verification from senior management, and that they would need to contact you directly to confirm. She got very angry, Eleanor. Very nasty. She even threatened to sue. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. Brenda forging my signature. It was beyond cruel. It was criminal. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about manipulation, fraud, and a desperate attempt to control Arthur's entire legacy. Sarah, I said, my voice tight with controlled fury. Thank you. Thank you so much for calling me. You have no idea how important this is. As soon as I hung up with Sarah, I immediately dialed Mr. Davison. He answered on the second ring, his usual calm replaced by a noticeable urgency when I recounted Sarah's revelation. Eleanor, this is absolutely critical information. A notarized statement and a sealed envelope in secure storage, that could be the key. I will contact their corporate storage facility first thing Monday morning to secure that envelope. No one else will get near it. His words were a balm to my raw nerves, confirming that this wasn't just my imagination or my grief playing tricks on me. Brenda's actions were becoming increasingly clear, increasingly brazen. I reflected on her calculated nature, her relentless pursuit of Arthur's assets. It made sense now, the way she had insinuated herself into our lives, the sudden increase in her concern when Arthur's health began to decline. I recalled Arthur's subtle warnings in his final months, disguised as casual remarks, his secretive phone calls in his study, when he would insist, "Just getting things in order, dear," whenever I inquired. At the time, I'd thought he was simply being his usual organized self, tying up loose ends before his retirement. Now, I realized he had been preparing for something far more insidious, anticipating the very scenario that had unfolded. He had sensed Brenda's avarice, her potential for treachery. Just as these thoughts coalesced, my phone buzzed with a new text from Clara. It was short, but potent, conveying Brenda's escalating fury. "Grandma, Mom just found out I gave you Grandpa Arthur's pocket watch. She's absolutely livid. She was screaming at Dad, saying, 'How could you let her take it? Everything in this house legally belongs to us now.'" The text was a final piece of confirmation. Brenda wasn't just after the large assets. She wanted to claim every single item, every personal memento, eradicating any connection I had to Arthur. But she had made a critical mistake. Arthur had foreseen her grasping nature, and now, thanks to Sarah and Clara, we had a tangible lead, an insurance policy from Arthur himself. The fight had truly begun. If you're captivated by this unfolding mystery, don't miss a single moment of the truth that's about to be uncovered. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay tuned for the next part of this incredible story. The fury radiating from Brenda over the pocket watch was palpable, even through Clara's text messages. But then, a few minutes later, another text arrived from my granddaughter, bringing a surprising, unexpected update. "Grandma," it read, "Dad just yelled at Mom. He said I was right to give you the watch, and that some things should stay in the family where they belong." Mom went completely silent after that. A small, hesitant flicker of hope sparked within me for Thomas. Perhaps, beneath Brenda's manipulative influence and whatever fear held him captive, there was still a shred of the decent man I once knew, the man who was Arthur's son. Maybe he wasn't entirely lost. It was a faint hope. But in the desolate landscape of my recent weeks, even a faint hope felt like a sunrise. I was still pondering this when Clara's phone buzzed with another message, sent just moments after her last. "Grandma, I found something else. Something really weird." My heart leaped. I was looking in Grandpa's old desk, just to see if Mom missed anything, and tucked way in the back of a drawer, under some old bills, was a business card. It has a phone number, and on the back, in Grandpa's handwriting, it says, "Call if anything happens." The name on the card is Mr. Thompson. A cold chill snaked down my spine. Mr. Thompson. The name meant nothing to me. Arthur had never mentioned anyone by that name, but the message on the back, "Call if anything happens," sent a clear, unmistakable signal. It was a premonition, a warning from beyond the grave. Suddenly, the pieces began to click into place with an unnerving clarity. Arthur hadn't been merely getting things in order in his final months. He had been laying a trail. He had been leaving me breadcrumbs, carefully planted clues, knowing that if anything happened to him, I would be the one to find them. The notarized statement and sealed envelope at the accounting firm, now this mysterious business card for Mr. Thompson. It was all part of a meticulous, carefully orchestrated plan. Arthur, my brilliant, methodical Arthur, had known. He had sensed Brenda's avarice, her potential for treachery. He had tried to warn me, to protect me, in the only way he knew how once his health began to fail and his ability to communicate clearly might have been compromised. He was preparing me for a fight he knew I would have to face alone after he was gone. He had done his best to arm me from the other side. A powerful surge of emotions swept through me, a mix of profound love for Arthur's foresight, fierce gratitude for his protective spirit, and a renewed, steely resolve. He hadn't just loved me. He had empowered me. I gripped Arthur's pocket watch in my hand, its cool metal a tangible connection to his enduring presence. I made a solemn promise, a silent vow to the man I loved, whose essence Brenda was so carelessly trying to erase. I would follow every single breadcrumb. I would piece together every clue he had left for me. I would not let his efforts be in vain. This was no longer just about inheriting a house or money. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my rightful place in Arthur's story, and indeed, in my own life. It was about honoring his memory and exposing the calculated greed of those who sought to destroy it. Brenda thought she had reduced me to the pitiful contents of a cardboard box, to a sidelined widow with no power or voice. She was about to discover how greatly she had underestimated Eleanor Henderson. The atmosphere in Mr. Davison's office felt charged, crackling with anticipation. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, as he carefully, meticulously, broke the seal on the large envelope retrieved from the secure storage facility. This was it. Arthur's insurance, his final message. Inside, as he gently tipped its contents onto the polished table, were not just a few papers, but a small treasure trove of Arthur's meticulous planning, neatly organized financial statements, copies of property deeds, detailed investment records, and at the very bottom, a pristine, sealed envelope. On it, in Arthur's distinctive hand, was written, "Last Will and Testament of Arthur Henderson," and a date exactly 3 months before his passing. "This, Mr. Davison declared, his voice firm, "is the will I drafted for Arthur. The legitimate one, the one he intended to sign before my vacation." He carefully opened the sealed document, his eyes scanning the pages. His expression, initially neutral, quickly turned grim, then hardened with a quiet indignation. "As I suspected," he murmured, "this is entirely different from the document read last week." He began to read aloud, and with each sentence, a wave of relief and a surge of righteous anger washed over me. The true will left the family home to both Thomas and me, but with the explicit provision that I would retain lifetime residency, complete and unencumbered. The majority of Arthur's substantial financial assets were bequeathed directly to me, ensuring my absolute comfort and security for the rest of my life. Furthermore, specific trusts were established for Clara's future education, a testament to Arthur's deep affection for his granddaughter. I would have complete financial security, true independence, and significant control over my future, exactly as Arthur and I had always discussed. "This is what Arthur wanted," Mr. Davison confirmed, looking up from the pages. "This is the true reflection of his intentions and his love for you, Eleanor." But the revelations weren't over. Mr. Davison then pulled out another set of documents from the secured envelope. Arthur, it seems, was not only planning for his estate, but also for potential contingencies. He had meticulously documented what he perceived as Brenda's increasingly suspicious activities. My heart pounded as Mr. Davison laid out the evidence. There were Arthur's handwritten notes, detailing instances where Brenda had accessed his computer while he was heavily medicated, ostensibly helping him with his emails. There were printouts of unexplained transfers of smaller sums of money from one of Arthur's secondary accounts to an unknown offshore account, transfers that occurred during periods when Brenda was supposedly managing his finances. And then, there was a small digital recorder, along with a typewritten transcript of a recorded conversation. Mr. Davison pressed play. A low, muffled conversation emerged, but Brenda's distinctive voice, sharp and demanding, was unmistakable. She was speaking to a man, discussing modifications to documents and a fee. The man's voice was curt, professional, slightly muffled. "This," Mr. Davison explained, stopping the recording, "is Mr. Thompson. The name on the business card Clara found. He's what we call a document specialist. In this context, it means he's highly skilled at creating convincing forgeries." The word forgery hit me with the force of a physical blow. It had been an unsettling suspicion, but to hear it stated so plainly, so clinically, was horrifying. So, the will that was read, it was a forgery? "Eleanor," Mr. Davison said, his voice grave, "based on Arthur's original will, his specific instructions to me, the evidence he meticulously collected, and this recording, the will that was presented was almost certainly fraudulent." He then pointed to a final, startling document, and here, Arthur even included a signed and dated statement, notarized by Sarah, clearly stating that any will dated after this legitimate one, especially if it significantly altered the provisions for you, should be considered suspect and investigated thoroughly. He foresaw all of this. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the documents before me. Arthur. My Arthur. Even as his life ebbed away, his mind was sharp, his love for me resolute. He was protecting me, even beyond the grave, meticulously building a case against the very betrayal he suspected. My grief, which had been a heavy blanket, now felt interwoven with a profound sense of gratitude and fierce determination. "So, what are our options?" I asked, wiping my eyes, my voice steady, despite the emotion. Mr. Davison leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "We have a very strong case. We could file a formal challenge in probate court immediately. With this evidence, it would be devastating for Thomas and Brenda. However, given that Thomas is Arthur's son and Clara is your granddaughter, you might wish to consider a more direct approach first. Confront them privately, lay out the evidence, and give them a chance to rectify the situation without public scandal." I thought of Thomas, his empty eyes, and the small glimmer of hope Clara's text had given me. I thought of Clara, caught in the middle of her parents' deception. "Let's try the direct approach first," I decided. "I want to give Thomas a chance. For Arthur's sake. And for Clara." As Mr. Davison began to organize the documents, a bold idea formed in my mind: the business card for Mr. Thompson. I pulled out my phone, typed in the number Clara had sent, and pressed dial. It rang only once before a curt, professional voice answered. "Thompson." "Mr. Thompson," I began, my voice clear and unwavering. "This is Eleanor Henderson. I believe you recently had some dealings with my stepdaughter-in-law, Brenda." There was a moment of silence on the other end, thick with unspoken recognition. Then, the man chuckled. A dry, humorless sound. "Ah, that family. Look, lady, I don't do that kind of work anymore. And if I were you, I'd stay far, far away from them. Nasty business, all of it." He paused, a hint of bitterness in his voice. "Only got half my fee, too. Said he'd pay the rest when the old man kicked it. Never heard back. People are all the same, only want to pay for half the job when it comes to altering documents while the husband is on his deathbed." He hung up abruptly, leaving me with his damning admission echoing in my ears. The next evening, I asked Vivian if she would mind hosting a dinner. "I need to speak with Thomas and Brenda," I told her, my voice unwavering. "And Clara should be there too." Vivian, sensing the steely resolve that now encased my grief, simply nodded, already bustling to set the table. I spent the afternoon preparing Arthur's favorite pot roast, the rich aroma filling Vivian's kitchen, a comforting scent from a time before the betrayal. As I stirred the gravy, I thought of Arthur, his gentle wisdom, his firm belief in justice. "Eleanor," he used to say, "you should always give people a chance to do the right thing before forcing their hand." I was giving them that chance. Clara arrived first, slipping in quietly, her eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and support. Then, the doorbell announced the arrival of Thomas and Brenda. Thomas entered, looking acutely uncomfortable, his gaze skittering away from mine. Brenda, however, marched in with her usual air of calculated superiority, her eyes sweeping over Vivian's cozy living room with a thinly veiled disdain. "Well, isn't this quaint?" Brenda remarked, her voice dripping with a sneering condescension. Eleanor, playing hostess in a borrowed home. Some things never change, I suppose. I turned from the kitchen, a calm, almost serene smile on my face. "Some skills you never lose, Brenda," I replied, my voice even, like cooking. Or, for that matter, recognizing a forgery. Brenda's smile instantly froze. Her eyes narrowed, and a flicker of something, fear or outrage, crossed her face before she quickly masked it. Thomas, behind her, actually flinched. The air in the room thickened, palpable with unspoken tension. We sat down to dinner, the pot roast going largely untouched by my guests. The conversation was strained, punctuated by forced pleasantries and Brenda's pointed, irrelevant chatter. I could feel their unease, their unspoken question. What is this about? They knew. They absolutely knew something was coming. As I began to clear the main course, bringing out Vivian's homemade apple pie, Brenda's composure finally snapped. "All right, Eleanor." She bit out, her voice sharp and brittle. "What is this? Why did you invite us here? Just spit it out." I placed the pie gently on the table, my movements deliberate. I met her gaze, my own eyes holding no trace of fear. "Very well, Brenda. The will that was read last week? The one that left me with a modest stipend and personal effects?" I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "It was a forgery," Brenda scoffed, a forced, theatrical sound. "Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. You're just bitter." Arthur changed his mind. "Arthur changed his mind, perhaps," I conceded, "but not in the way you presented. He ensured his true intentions were protected. Do you recall a Mr. Thompson, Brenda, a document specialist?" I watched her face, the faint tremor that passed through her perfectly made-up features. "Mr. Davison now has a recorded conversation, a rather telling one, between you and Mr. Thompson. He admitted, quite unequivocally, to creating altered documents for you. He even complained about only getting half his fee for altering documents while the husband was on his deathbed." Brenda's face contorted, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "That's a lie! You're making this up. Thomas, tell her. Arthur was going to cut us out. He was obsessed with leaving everything to her." She turned to her husband, her eyes blazing, attempting to pull him back into her web of deceit. I calmly reached into a folder I had placed beside my chair and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the first page of Arthur's legitimate will, dated 3 months before his death. I laid it on the table. "This is a copy of the first page of Arthur's actual last will and testament, notarized and signed by him, and now secured by Mr. Davison." I then placed another document next to it, the full copy of the legitimate will. Arthur never intended to cut anyone out, Brenda. He was meticulous and fair. Thomas's eyes, which had been wide with confusion and mounting horror, fell upon the documents. He picked up the full will, his hands trembling slightly as he read the provisions. "The house to both of us, with my lifetime residency. Substantial assets for me. Trusts for Clara." His face crumbled. A dam breaking. He looked up, tears welling in his eyes. His voice choked with emotion. Dad never intended to leave you with nothing, Mom. He provided for everyone." The realization of Brenda's monumental deception and his own complicity hit him hard. Brenda, however, remained defiant, a cornered animal. "Possession is 9/10 of the law, Eleanor. And we have the house, the money. What are you going to do about it?" "Forgery, Brenda," I stated, my voice cutting through her bluster, "is a felony. And Mr. Davison is fully prepared to file charges in probate court, complete with the recorded confession and Arthur's meticulously gathered evidence." Clara, who had been silently watching the entire exchange, her face a mask of shock and betrayal, suddenly found her voice. She stepped forward, her young voice trembling with fury as she faced her mother. "You did this? You forged Grandpa's will? You tried to take everything from Grandma?" Without waiting for an answer, she walked to my side, slipping her hand into mine, her presence a silent, powerful affirmation of her loyalty. Thomas, witnessing his daughter's devastating disillusionment, finally broke. He looked from Brenda to me, then to Clara, his face a picture of utter devastation and shame. We have to fix this," he stammered, his voice broken. "Yes, Thomas, you do," I agreed, my gaze firm. "Here is my proposal. You honor Arthur's legitimate will. You account for all the items Brenda has already sold, and ensure the proceeds are returned to the estate. In exchange, no charges will be filed. This remains a family matter, not a public scandal." Brenda, her face contorted with rage, pushed back her chair with a violent scrape. "You'll regret this, Eleanor. You haven't heard the last of me." She stormed out of Vivian's house, slamming the door behind her. Thomas, however, remained. He sank back into his chair, his head in his hands, silent sobs racking his body. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he finally choked out, looking up at me, his eyes streaming. "I should have questioned her. I should have. I just didn't want to believe she was capable of something like this." I walked over to him, my anger fading, replaced by a profound sadness for Arthur's son, and a deep, enduring love that transcended Brenda's malice. I knelt beside him, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "It's okay, Thomas," I murmured, holding him as he wept. "It's going to be okay. We'll fix this. Together." 3 months passed with a surprising swiftness, a testament to the efficient, if emotionally taxing, work of untangling Brenda's deceit. Faced with Arthur's meticulously gathered evidence, Thomas's refusal to cooperate in her cover-up, and Mr. Davison's formidable legal prowess, Brenda's defiance crumbled. The legal matters were resolved with remarkable speed, far faster than any of us had dared to hope. Mr. Davison formally filed Arthur's legitimate will, and the assets were properly transferred, just as Arthur had intended. I now live in a charming, modest 2-bedroom cottage, nestled in a quiet neighborhood just a few blocks from Clara's school. It's a bright, airy space, filled with sunlight and the sweet scent of the rosebush in the small garden. The old house, the one Arthur and I had built our lives in, was sold. I couldn't bring myself to return to it, not after Brenda's callous attempts to erase Arthur's presence and my memories. The proceeds from the sale were divided according to Arthur's true will, allowing me a comfortable new beginning. Clara, my sweet granddaughter, stays with me every other weekend, her laughter and youthful energy breathing new life into my home. Her father, Thomas, after finally being forced to confront the full extent of Brenda's manipulations and then discovering her infidelity, a separate affair entirely, coupled with lavish spending of his money on another man, had filed for divorce. Brenda, it turned out, had moved to Chicago with her new boyfriend, leaving behind a trail of financial wreckage and broken trust. Thomas visits me for coffee most mornings before work, a new ritual we've established as we slowly, carefully rebuild our relationship. He's a shadow of the man he was, humbled by his mistakes, but there's a quiet strength emerging. One morning, he brought me a small box, heavy with guilt and remorse. I found these tucked away in one of Dad's old desk drawers. "Mom," he said, handing it to me. Brenda must have missed them. Inside were dozens of old photographs, chronicling Arthur and my life together. Our wedding day, vacations, holidays, candid moments of pure joy. Brenda might have tried to erase our history, but Arthur, in his wisdom, had preserved it. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "Thank you, Thomas. I've started a new memory book, a beautiful leather-bound album, for Clara and any future grandchildren, meticulously adding these precious photographs, ensuring our story, Arthur's story, will never be forgotten." Clara asked me one evening, as we sat watching the sunset from my new porch swing, "Grandma, do you still miss Grandpa Arthur?" I paused, looking out at the fading light. "Every day, my dear," I replied, my voice soft, but not in the same way as before. It's softer now, less jagged. Like a part of me, a gentle certainty, always there. As I sat on that porch swing after Clara had gone to bed, Vivian's cheerful voice already echoing in my mind with her latest, ill-fated matchmaking attempt, I reflected on the journey. I was profoundly grateful for Vivian's unwavering belief in me, for Thomas's efforts to make amends, for Clara's pure, unconditional affection, and for Mr. Davison's steady guidance. And, strangely, I found myself even grateful for Brenda's cruelty. Without meaning to, she had given me exactly what I needed. Her spite, her cold-hearted attempt to steal everything, had ignited a spark of indignation within me. That spark had burned away my paralysis, forced me out of my grief-stricken numbness, and compelled me to fight for Arthur, for myself, for the truth. It had transformed me. I looked up at the vast expanse of the night sky, feeling Arthur's presence not as a loss, but as an enduring part of who I am. He was there, in the stars, in the gentle rustle of the leaves, in the beating of my own resilient heart. His small mementos, the pocket watch, the glasses, the sweater, once dismissed as worthless trinkets by Brenda, were now priceless touchstones, physical manifestations of an enduring love that had transcended even death and betrayal. Grief, I realized, doesn't disappear. It becomes incorporated, weaving itself into the tapestry of life, becoming part of the landscape, less a gaping wound, and more a quiet, profound knowing. I was embracing this new life, a life Brenda had tried so desperately to deny me, a life Arthur had, in his wisdom, trusted me to find. I whispered to the shimmering stars above, my voice a soft, fierce testament to my survival and my strength. I'm still here. I'm still whole. And I am so much more than what fits in a cardboard box.